Welcome to Public Affairs Roundtable, a discussion of current events in the nation and around the world and how they affect the people of Indiana. Here's your moderator, Larry Lough.
Imagine a medical development that could be a potentially enormous impact on society and medicine. A cure for cancer, perhaps? The secret of eternal life? The answer is none of the above. The answer is RU-486, and that is the description the New England Journal of Medicine has said it could have, an enormous impact on society and medicine. It is an abortion pill, so to speak. We're 14 years after Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court decision that allowed abortions in the United States. Are we, as some people say, on the verge perhaps of ending this debate with a medical development? We'll discuss this and other abortion topics today with our panelists, Dee Carlton, who is acting president of Planned Parenthood of East Central Indiana, Cheryl Martin, who's the education chairman of Delaware County Right to Life, and John Rouse, our producer and a professor of political science here at Ball State University. John, 1973 Roe versus Wade. Could we even think that perhaps the debate is near an end on abortion?
No, I don't think it's near an end. It could be changing. I think we have to keep in mind why this is important. As you say, this is the 14th anniversary of the controversial Supreme Court case by the name of Roe versus Wade. In our society, oftentimes politicians do not want to deal with the very difficult issues. I think of the racial case in 1954, Brown versus Board of Education. The Supreme Court stepped in there. The Supreme Court also stepped in with the controversial issue of abortion as well. So the politicians, in a sense, think that they're going to lose on this particular issue. But let's back up just for a minute and look at this issue as a political issue. Also controversial in society is the issue of sexual roles, or are the issues of sexual roles. The issue of sex education is very important too. In a sense, the pill, some 25 years ago, has caused a revolution of sorts in behavior regarding issues of sex. So economic implications are here, as well as political implications. And that's the reason that this particular issue is important at this particular time.
To background it, Cheryl Martin, Roe versus Wade is an anniversary that Right to Life doesn't forget.
That's right. It's I think our yearly activities tend to culminate on that day because it keeps it fresh in our minds that what we're doing out there is trying to stop abortion. It's very important to us that abortion is stopped, and the sooner the better.
And the method, what is it that Right to Life, I guess what vehicle does Right to Life look for?
Educating the public about what abortion is our main vehicle. We do have lobbyists in various state capitals who work in the state houses. Here in Delaware County, we attempt to get out to speak to many church organizations, schools if we're invited, pass out literature at fair booths and so forth. So it's a very basic grassroots attempt to educate the public about abortion.
Dee Carlton, Planned Parenthood's position in terms of abortion is sometimes muddied by anti-abortion forces who call Planned Parenthood an abortion clinic.
That's right.
Clarify.
First of all, we are not an abortion clinic. There are some Planned Parenthoods in the United States that do abortions. We locally do not do abortions. Planned Parenthood stands for the right to choose, and strictly stands for the right to choose. If you remember publicity that we received last year, several groups within the community went together and had a back alley rally last year on the anniversary of Roe versus Wade. So we're very much aware of Roe versus Wade also, because we were celebrating the Roe versus Wade decision because it did allow women to have a bigger choice on what their fertility should be.
I guess one of the questions, what's the difference between pro-choice and pro-abortion?
Well, Larry, I like to explain it this way. I'm not pro-abortion. As an adoptive parent, I have very mixed feelings about abortion. But also, I'm not pro-tonsillectomy, I'm not pro-appendectomy, and I'm not pro-abortion. Abortion is, is a surgical procedure that is decided between a woman and her doctor, just as an appendectomy or a tonsillectomy is decided. And so we stand for the right to choose. We believe that the woman should have that right with her doctor's consultation to decide whether she's to have an abortion.
Cheryl Martin, do you see that line that clear? Is there a line between pro-choice and pro-abortion?
There's a very definite line between the two. I don't. I believe you're either pro-abortion or you're pro-choice. If you make a distinction such as I'm not pro-tonsillectomy, for example, a woman isn't given the chance to make what I consider to be an informed decision about abortion in the first place. Whereas when a tonsillectomy is talked about with her and her doctor, she knows what kind of risk she's taking. That's very unfair, I think.
I'd like to disagree with that, because there are all kinds of rules and regulations that have been promulgated that ensure that a woman has counseling before she has an abortion. And in counseling, all of the options are presented in terms of what can be done about this problem pregnancy. And no woman is going to be having an abortion unless she has a problem pregnancy. And so we at Planned Parenthood do a very fantastic job of presenting all the options, and the pro-abortionists will say, well, you know, I went to Planned Parenthood and they talked me into having an abortion. That probably is as far from the truth as can ever be made, because we've had lots of people that have come to us saying, you know, I'm here for the counseling just because I have to be. Tell me where to go get an abortion. And we say, well, you've got to have the counseling. You know, you've got to look at all the options. And a lot of people leave us after the counseling service and say, you know, I'm not going to have an abortion. I'm going to choose one of the other options. So women are informed.
But are all such services as, I guess,
anyone
involved
that has an abortion has to have counseling.
Well, the informed consent that I'm speaking about is the surgical risks of the operation itself.
It's not nearly as risky as having a pregnancy.
But it is not discussed with the woman so that she is able to make that decision based on the information given.
If I can somehow get back into this conversation, I mean, it's interesting that the two of you have different opinions about this, but it seems that the thing we have to do is to look at what's happening. And the reality is, according to that same journal, the New England Journal of Medicine, mentioned by Larry, last year or a year or so ago, there were 90,000 births in the world, and there were some 40 to 50,000 abortions. Mm-hmm. And how can you talk about abortion without talking about some sort of focus upon sex education to keep abortion from occurring? It seems to me that Right to Life would support Planned Parenthood for sex education, but that doesn't seem the case, or that doesn't seem to happen, or am I mistaken, Cheryl?
Well, Right to Life, we're single-minded in our endeavors. We don't take a stand on sex education as an organization. Many of our individuals, I'm sure, have a particular idea about sex education in the schools. But as an organization, we feel that we're more powerful if we can direct our energies in a single direction, and that is to protect human life.
Well, isn't that the weakness of Right to Life? It seems to me that the strength of pro-choice is that they're involved in not only abortion, but they're involved in child care for women who have children who don't have the father at home or something of that sort, sex education and this sort of thing. Wouldn't you be more advantageous to reach out to other groups to try to build a coalition for your issues?
Well, I believe that, again, many of our individuals do feel that way. They have very strong opinions about how those things should be handled. But in order for us to be able to have the maximum amount of support, we feel that we achieve that purpose by being very single-minded in our Right to Life stance, which can be different from a pro-life stand. Pro-life can entail all those other things, but a Right to Life stand for us is to protect the sanctity of human life.
So you're saying, in a sense, then, that the ability of Right to Life, then, to focus the issue in a black and white sense is the strength, not the weakness of your efforts.
Right, that's right.
Have you women, or your organizations, I guess, followed the development of RU 486, and what does that hold in terms of the debate over abortion in years to come, do you believe?
I was thrilled to death when I read about it in the paper. Which was just recently. It hasn't been publicized too much or too long. RU 486, may I go ahead and explain
Please,
what
yes.
it is and how
Please
it
do.
works and so forth? It's a pill that has been developed in France, and it's not licensed in France yet. And just the latest information I got 10 minutes ago was that probably it will be licensed by June of this year in France. They're still doing research with it. They're still trying to perfect it and get it to the point where there are less side effects than what there are now. The pill is simply a pill that causes abortion. What it does is technically it blocks the progesterone in the uterus, and the progesterone is necessary for the implantation of a fertilized egg. So if that progesterone is blocked by the RU486, then the egg cannot implant. And so it causes the sloughing of the lining of the uterus, whether there is a fertilized egg there or not. So actually the woman does not know usually whether she's had a pregnancy that has aborted or not, because it's taken very early after the conception, possible fertilization.
If I could ask this question, it seems first of all that what this new proposed drug is simply a chemical abortion.
Right.
Is that a fair assessment?
That's a fair assessment.
But well, doesn't this, in a second sense, in a secondary sense, take away the morality of it all? For example, a woman could have sex, and then this could be the morning after pill, and so doesn't this take away some of the moral concerns of not knowing, am I pregnant or am I not pregnant?
Well, we think that it's going to be a great boon, because one of the issues that the Right to Life people tout is that the psychological effects, and there are some women that do have psychological effects. But if they don't know whether they're pregnant or not, then they have a regular period, and they don't know whether they've aborted or whether it's just been a regular period. So they're going through that change without knowing whether they've been pregnant or not. So it will help the psychological effects, we think.
Cheryl, do you see the difference between the chemical and the surgical abortion? I mean, does that have an impact on the debate?
It's definitely going to change things. But I am still very concerned about the psychological effects that this pill will have on women. It's been 14 years since abortion has been legal, and so our psychologists have been able to see things happening to these women who've had abortions that for a period of time they were not able to identify as being connected with their abortion. And it's called the post-abortion syndrome. There are many women affected by this, not just a few. And to me, it seems very likely that the number of women affected by post-abortion syndrome will increase with the knowledge that a woman has to wonder, did she abort her child or not? How many times did she abort a baby, perhaps, by taking RU486?
RU486, though, in the early stages, does it not act just like many other birth control devices that are available to women now?
RU486 is an abortifacient, and so it will operate on a fertilized egg the same way that any other abortion does. It stops the pregnancy.
Yes, but we know that 25 to 40% of all fertilized eggs are not implanted anyway. Just naturally the body disposes of them. So, the fact that I have sex and I'm not sure whether I've gotten pregnant from that sexual act, and I take a pill and I have a natural period, it could have been that it would just been that way anyway, that I would have had a fertilized egg there that simply didn't implant. And the fact that I took a pill really isn't going to make that much difference.
Let me look at or discuss some of the political issues again. Some people will argue that a woman's not to have the right to have abortion limits her freedom, and what this particular court decision has done is to further enhance the freedom of women in the marketplace. In other words, they have a job, they have a very good job, they get pregnant, they don't want to be pregnant, and so therefore they have to quit their job. I think we also have to focus upon the political aspects, and in doing some research for this program, there is a recent poll by Parents Magazine. It says that a large majority of the adults polled favor sex education in the public schools. It said that 66% said that contraceptive devices should be available through schools with parental consent. The survey said that 29% of those polled thought sex education programs should teach students that sex should be saved for marriage. 66% felt that it should be an individual choice. 77% of the respondents favored sex education in the public schools. So there seems to be pretty good evidence, and we have to look at evidence. We have to do inductive reasoning by this whole process. What can be done to stop abortions? And it seems that the problems are economic, the problems are social dynamic in terms of people's behavior. How do you change young people wanting to have sex when they're 15 years of age? And then you also prevent abortions. Cheryl, is that too big of an order?
Well, again, Right to Life doesn't take a stand on sex education, but it's my feeling that there is quite a bit of sex education that goes on in the schools now, and I don't see that stopping sexual activity in teenagers nor their pregnancies. So this report here is a little, I don't see what it's trying to support, actually.
John, I'm appalled at the birth rate, or the pregnancy rate of teenagers in the United States. If you step across the border between the United States and Canada, the birth rate for teenagers drops 1/2. If you look at the birth rate or the pregnancy rates of teenagers in all the other countries of the world, we're clear at the top. And we have this puritanical mindset that says we don't talk about sex with our kids. And kids are sexual beings. They are interested in sex. I've talked to kids for 20 years about sex. And you walk into a classroom and talk and say, this is, today we're going to talk about sex. You can hear a pin drop. The kids are interested. The kids want to know. The kids have all kinds of questions, and they want the questions answered from somebody that knows the answers, not from their peers. We at Planned Parenthood do not support sex education in the schools by saying we're going to reduce pregnancies in your schools by such and such number, because we don't know that we are going to. We believe that kids have the right to know. Nobody has ever been hurt by information. Lots and lots and lots of people are being hurt by non-information. If they don't know about what's offered in sex education classes, then they very definitely can be hurt. They can be caught up in this syndrome of having sex because they're going to have sex, whether they know the facts about it or not. They're going to have sex. Some of them are going to get pregnant. Then they're going to have to make the big decision about whether they're going to have an abortion or not, whether they're going to keep the babies. This is what I'm seeing. Kids are keeping their babies. I've got 13 and 14-year-old kids having babies.
Well, it seems to me that the argument that Right to Life might make is that Planned Parenthood has an amoral approach towards this. Cheryl, is that a fair articulation of the position?
I really decline to take a position on sex education from a Right to Life perspective because we really don't have one. I think that children should be taught about sex. I think the way that they're taught about sex can be very different. From a biological standpoint, I think is very necessary. But to talk to students about sex and let them know what contraceptives are, where they're available, to me is not the way to talk to a teenager about sex.
Who talks to a teenager about contraceptives? Is that something that ought to be done in the home then?
Ideally, it should be,
and
I know that it's not.
Right?
That's true. Again, from a biological standpoint, I think that children need to be taught about sex. They need to know that the sex act is going to produce a baby eventually, and they need to be cautioned not to back it up with, well, if that doesn't work and you're going to do it anyway, well then here, this is how you take care of the problem. I think that's a bit encouraging to a teenager rather than trying to show them, maybe trying to teach them really what you want them to be taught.
If I could get back to the moral issue, is abortion murder, Dee?
I don't believe so.
Cheryl?
Yes, it is murder. It's the taking of an innocent life, and that's...
Well, okay, let's presume then that you have a new law and abortion becomes murder. What happens in terms of appropriations to prosecute women who are accused of murder?
That didn't happen when abortion was illegal. I haven't seen or read of one case where a person was convicted of performing an abortion or having an abortion. I don't see that is going to be the issue.
What about the women that die if you make abortion illegal?
There are women who die now from illegal
They may
abortion.
not be prosecuted, but there's not much recourse if you're a dead person that's just had an abortion or just attempted an abortion. So, you know, if it's made illegal, that's what's going to happen. The death rate from illegal abortions is going to go up.
So in a sense, Planned Parenthood has a conservative approach to government in this, and Right to Life has a liberal approach to government in this process?
We would like to see abortion put back into the hands of the states.
So putting it in the hands of government?
Right.
Okay.
The way it was before the
See,
1973
we don't
decision.
believe that anyone should be able to legislate the decision that goes on between a woman and her doctor or a clinician. We feel that basically legislators are males. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are now, but it's certainly an overwhelming majority of legislators on the state and national level are males. And we don't believe that they have any perspective as far as understanding what the whole issue is concerned about a woman carrying a baby to term or not carrying the baby to term. And so many of the positions that we're hearing right now from the Right to Life are even anti-contraceptive. And we don't believe, definitely do not believe, that anything that is anti-contraceptive should be legalized or made restrictive by legal restrictions. We, as Planned Parenthood, are the #1 preventer of abortions. And this point is usually not brought out, especially by the Right to Life people. We are furnishing contraceptives to millions of women every year and every month. And these are women that are not getting pregnant and are not needing to have abortions. So we at Planned Parenthood are the leading preventer of abortions in the United States.
Then I would like to interject here. I wonder why there are over 1 million abortions every year. When before, when abortion was illegal, we had no near that number of abortions being performed.
Well, #1, you don't know how many abortions were being performed before it was legalized. #2, we know that the pregnancy rate is going up. And, you know, if the pregnancy rate is going up, more kids are involved in sexual activity.
And more contraceptives apparently are not working.
No, the kids that are coming for the contraceptives are getting contraceptive care and not becoming pregnant so that they don't have to have abortions.
Well, will RU 486 really not have much of an effect on the debate as we know it? I mean, especially since I guess the pro-life, Right to Life movement has directly or indirectly support of the Catholic Church, an extremely powerful lobby in and of itself, and that the Church is anti-contraceptive, and that so regardless of whether you call RU 486 a contraceptive or an abortion method, isn't it likely that it's not going to enjoy the support, or it's not going to end the debate for the Right to Life movement?
No, the only thing that will end the debate is when abortion is illegal again. There will no longer be the need for a debate at that point.
But that's not going to end abortions, is it?
Probably not. I'm sure abortion will continue to go on, but
Aren't you going to have sex education to in terms of trying to encourage that behavior not to happen?
well, we have sex education now in the schools.
But the institutions don't seem to be working very well at that issue. The family, and especially.
Cheryl, I think one thing that, you're saying we have sex education. I'm in the schools, and sex education is very fragmented in most schools, and it's not very well made a part of the curriculum. Let's put it that way. So to say we have sex education, we really maybe do and maybe don't have sex education. Larry, I'd like to comment about 486. It's probably a moot issue as far as really discussing it for the United States right now, because it's probably, I said earlier, it's probably going to be legalized in France in June of this year. We'll be lucky, very lucky, if we have it legalized and available in the United States on any kind of a regular basis in the next 5 years, because the drug companies are scared to death of liability. And if you've noticed the information in the popular press, IUDs have been made basically unavailable because of liability for the drug companies. And I guess it's a symptom of our society and our political situation right now, or whatever, but everyone's afraid. We're scared to death of what's going to happen as far as liability.
It is a political situation too, isn't it, John? I mean, the Congress, state legislatures would have some means of limiting liability of companies that would want to market certain products.
I think that's an interesting point, because here we get into politicians again.
Right.
If you shove the issue back down to the states, the responsibility goes to our local politicians. And they may not tell you this, but I suspect that they don't want to have to handle that hot potato. And they're going to, the politicians, again, tend to want to go to the safe way to get reelected.
And this is an issue of perceptions as well. I mean, didn't Roe versus Wade, in fact, ease the debate for some people? Say, well, if the Supreme Court says it's legal, then it must be legal. But then as the technology shows us that perhaps viable life starts earlier, then the American public, with the Right to Life lobby, begins to get a little queasy about approving of legal abortions. Aren't we talking about basically an American mindset that has to be, I'm not going to say programmed, but influenced, and an idea of perceptions of what is abortion, what is life, and what is not?
Well, I think the two views that we've had today indicate that the perception about conception differs, and it differs according to very key ethical or perceptual approaches, and how to solve the problem. Right to life has a direct focus without bridging the other issues.
So while RU 486 might be able to suppress the argument, in fact, for the Right to Life movement, it'll continue. We're out of time. That's a question we'll all have to ponder. Thanks to our panelists, Dolores Carlton from Planned Parenthood and Cheryl Martin from Delaware County Right to Life, and John Rouse. I'm Larry Lough. Thank you for joining us.
If you have comments regarding this program, please address them to John Rouse, Box 149, Muncie, Indiana 47305. The producer for Public Affairs Roundtable is John Rouse. Associate producers are Cecil Bohannon and Bill Mosier. This program is a production of University Media Services, the Department of Political Science, and radio and television stations on the campus of Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana.